If you're looking for a crash course in one of the most potent, really painful, and surprisingly current pieces of American history, a story about charisma, power, and ultimately betrayal, then you are definitely in the right place. Welcome back to the deep dive.
Hey there. Yeah, today we're sort of peeling back the layers on the 2021 biographical historical drama, Judas and the Black Messiah. And our source material is, well, it's pretty exhaustive. We're covering everything from the precise, devastating timeline of events in late 1960s Chicago,
Right.
all the way through to the incredible kind of logistical and creative journey the film took. Took 6 years, to get it to the screen.
6 years, wow. And our mission today, it's more than just like summarizing the plot. We really want to unpack the film's narrative core, the FBI's systematic elimination of Fred Hampton, but also give you that insider perspective on its production, its massive critical and awards reception, and maybe the most fascinating part, the completely unexpected background of the screenwriters who actually engineered this historical tragedy. It's quite a story behind the story.
It really is. And the title itself, Judas and the Black Messiah, it just lays the foundation, doesn't it? Right away. It signals that central conflict. It's the story of Fred Hampton, played brilliantly by Daniel Kaluuya.
Oh, fantastic performance.
Incredible. The dynamic 21-year-old chairman of the Illinois Black Panther Party. And the film forces us, really, to witness his rapid rise and his tragic downfall through the eyes of his betrayer, William O'Neill.
Lakeith Stanfield.
Played by Lakeith Stanfield, yeah. The FBI informant whose cooperation, whose information directly led to Hampton's assassination.
And driving this whole thing, this urgent piece of cinema, is the director and producer Shaka King, who not only, wrestled this incredibly complex material into a compelling narrative, but made sure it felt grounded in this authentic, almost painful reality.
Yeah, and to really get the tragedy, you first have to understand the mechanism of the betrayal.
Yeah.
How did it even start? And that begins with William O'Neill. He wasn't like some disgruntled ideological opponent, He was, as you said, the Judas figure. But his involvement started with something remarkably small, almost foolish, really, a petty crime.
It's just the perfect tragic irony, isn't it? That the FBI found its ultimate tool of destruction through this low-level, opportunistic offense. O'Neill was just 19, a kid, basically, a petty criminal in Chicago. And the key detail, according to the sources, is he gets arrested for trying to steal a car. Okay, fine. But he tried to do it while posing as a federal officer, flashing a fake badge.
That detail is crucial.
That act of impersonation, that kind of desperate move, that's what gave the FBI the perfect leverage. It handed it to them on a plate, almost.
It really did. It's like a textbook case of federal coercion. FBI Special Agent Roy Mitchell, Jesse Plemons plays him. Just brilliantly unsettling. He didn't need to, win O'Neill over ideologically.
Yeah.
Didn't have to convince him the Panthers were bad. He just presented this non-negotiable ultimatum. Look, all the charges from the attempted car theft, the impersonation, all of it, dropped. You walk free.
Pardon?
If you agree to infiltrate the Illinois Black Panther Party, get inside. Gather detailed intelligence specifically on Fred Hampton. Mitchell just targeted his immediate self-interest, trapped him.
So O'Neill's now inside the organization. He takes the deal, but then he's immediately confronted by the sheer, just overwhelming power of Fred Hampton. And we really need to contextualize why Hampton was so feared by the establishment, don't we?
Absolutely.
He wasn't just some firebrand speaker shouting slogans. He was a master community organizer, a truly persuasive orator who spoke directly to systemic poverty, to injustice, in a way that resonated deeply.
Exactly. And the film makes sure to show the BPP's constructive side, too. Those initiatives like the Free Breakfast for Children program.
Yeah, that was huge.
Hugely important. It provided nutrition, structure for kids in impoverished areas. It was offering a tangible alternative to state systems that were, frankly, ignoring them. This was real social action. It showed the BPP wasn't just about armed rhetoric. It was about building parallel structures, parallel governance almost.
But the truly revolutionary thing, the action that must have absolutely terrified the FBI and J. Edgar Hoover the most, was Hampton successfully forging the multiracial Rainbow Coalition. I mean, that was just radical for late 1960s Chicago.
Oh, incredibly radical.
Yeah.
And critical. The sources really underline the significance here. Hampton managed to align the Black Panther Party, a revolutionary black organization, with predominantly white groups like the Young Patriots organization.
Which was made up of poor, working-class white Southerners, right? Migrants to Chicago.
That's right, Appalachian migrants, and also the Puerto Rican civil rights group, the Young Lords. Think about that. In an era just defined by racial tension and division, Hampton was building a unified, class-based movement that deliberately crossed racial lines.
The threat wasn't just, law and order. The threat was to the fundamental power structure, to capitalism, to racial hierarchy.
Precisely. And the narrative, smartly, it also humanizes Hampton.
Right.
It weaves in details about his relationship with fellow BPP member Deborah Johnson. Dominique Fishback plays her.
Another great performance.
Really strong. And that relationship, it just deepens the tragedy.
Yeah.
Especially when you learn she was pregnant with their child when Hampton was briefly released from prison later on. That personal connection, it grounds the political struggle in real human stakes.
And as this revolutionary power is building, you see the state's response getting more and more desperate. The legal system just gets used like a blunt instrument against him.
Yeah.
Hampton's initial imprisonment, the one that temporarily pulled him out of organizing, it was based on the completely absurd pretext of him allegedly stealing, what was it, $71 worth of ice cream bars?
$71 of ice cream. It sounds like a joke, but it wasn't.
The sheer pettiness of that charge against a man organizing these cross-community solidarity movements, it just speaks volumes about the FBI's strategy, doesn't it? It wasn't about justice, it was harassment, removal by any means necessary. They couldn't charge him for organizing effectively, so they charged him for ice cream.
Meanwhile, O'Neill, the informant, he's getting forced deeper and deeper into the deception. He actually rises through the DPP ranks, becomes a trusted figure. He ends up as their security captain.
The irony is just excruciating.
It's unbelievable. And the internal conflict for him becomes unbearable during a police operation, a raid that actually included the firebombing of the BPP chapter office. His life is genuinely at risk.
He manages to get out of that chaos, but he's furious, right? He wants out.
Yeah, he tries to quit, tells Mitchell, "I'm done. This is too dangerous." But Mitchell just holds up the threat of the original car theft charges.
Yeah.
Just dangles it over him. The FBI didn't need his loyalty. They just needed leverage. And they held onto it tight.
Okay, so this escalating internal pressure, the violence, it leads to the final devastating push from the FBI. What's the catalyst there?
Well, there are a couple of key events. First, the tragic, very suspicious death of BPP member Jimmy Palmer while he was in police custody. Then, fellow member Jake Winters retaliates. There's a deadly shootout. Winters kills several officers before being killed himself.
Oh, things are spiraling.
Exactly. The stakes just shoot through the roof. And then Hampton's appeal for that ridiculous ice cream charge gets rejected, so he's facing prison time again. With all this violence swirling, the FBI director, J. Edgar Hoover, decides, okay, the time for just containment, for harassment, it's over.
And here we need to really pause and contextualize the true weight of the FBI's actions. Hoover gives the ultimate directive. Fred Hampton must be neutralized. That's the word they use.
Neutralized.
Chilling.
This isn't just surveillance anymore. This is a mandate for political assassination, operating directly under the umbrella of the FBI's notorious counterintelligence program. Yeah, that's such a critical point for you, the listener, to really grasp. The FBI's actions weren't random. They weren't rogue agents. This was systematic. Part of COINTELPRO, the counterintelligence program.
Which ran for years.
It operated from 1956 all the way to 1971. And its stated purpose, its official purpose, was to survey, infiltrate, discredit, and disrupt domestic political organizations. But for groups like the Black Panther Party, the directive was explicit to prevent the rise of a black messiah, quote unquote, who could unify and galvanize black nationalism.
So Hampton fit that profile perfectly in their eyes.
He is exactly who they feared. This wasn't just a few bad apples. This was institutionalized destruction aimed at political movements.
Okay, so armed with this deadly directive from Hoover, Mitchell corners O'Neill one last time. How does he ensure compliance this time?
He plays the fear card again, but differently.
Yeah.
He basically warns O'Neill, look, whether you quit now or not, the BPP is eventually going to find out you're the mole. They'll figure it out. And when they do, you're in mortal danger either way.
So he's trapped. Damned if he does, damned if he doesn't.
Completely trapped. Terrified. He reluctantly agrees to the plan. And the film shows him receiving the vial of sedatives. Not directly from Mitchell, but from another undercover FBI collaborator.
Oh, interesting detail.
Yeah, it's sort of a subtle gesture, maybe meant to assure O'Neill he wasn't totally alone in this, that he was part of this larger machinery of betrayal. Makes it slightly less personal, maybe?
Yeah.
Or just spreads the guilt.
So the execution of the plan, it's just cold, clinical.
Utterly. The following evening, BPP members, including Hampton, who's just been released from jail briefly, they gather at the apartment on Monroe Street. O'Neill is there. And there's this moment where an allied gang leader actually offers Hampton money to flee the country. a chance to save himself.
And Hampton refuses.
Immediately rejects it. Insists the money has to be used to establish a people's medical clinic in memory of Jake Winters, the member killed in the shootout. That final choice just highlights his absolute commitment to the movement over his own safety.
And it's in that atmosphere, hours before the raid, that O'Neill does it.
Yeah. He slips the sedative, probably secobarbital, into Hampton's drink. He then leaves the apartment not long after. Just disappears into the Chicago night.
And then,
hours later, in the pre-dawn darkness, around 4:45 a.m., a joint force of Chicago police officers working with FBI agents raids the apartment. They shoot and assassinate the unconscious Fred Hampton in his bed.
while he's drugged, unconscious.
Yeah. And they arrest Deborah Johnson, who's lying next to him, pregnant. The film is unflinching. It doesn't shy away from the horrific reality of that state-sanctioned murder.
The postscript of the film is crucial too, right? It provides that necessary historical context, the long shadow this event casts.
Absolutely essential. We see that powerful archival footage of Hampton's funeral procession, thousands of people. It shows the immense impact his death had on the community. And crucially, we also see snippets of that 1989 interview O'Neill gave for the documentary Eyes on the Prize, too.
Where he's clearly haunted.
Oh, deeply. A man just living with the terrible weight of his choices, trying to justify them maybe, but the weight is visible.
And the final title cards deliver that devastating historical fallout. O'Neill continued working as an informant, even went into witness protection for a while, but ultimately he couldn't escape the past. He took his own life in 1990 on the very day Eyes on the Prize 2 premiered.
Such a tragic end. And on the judicial side, the Hampton family and the survivors of the raid, they filed a monumental civil lawsuit against the FBI, the Chicago police, the Cook County State's attorney. Filed it back in 1970.
And it wasn't a quick settlement.
Not at all. It dragged on for 12 agonizing years. 12 years. Before finally being settled in 1982 for $1.85 million. Which, okay, was a significant sum for the time, but does it even begin to cover the cost of a life taken, a movement deliberately dismantled?
Of course not. And connecting that history right up to the present day, the sources confirm that Fred Hampton Jr., the son born just weeks after the assassination, and his mother, Akua and Jerry, formerly Deborah Johnson, they continue the fight. They preserve the movement's legacy. They serve as chairman and board member, respectively, of the Black Panther Party Cubs.
Yeah, the legacy endures. The tragedy of 1969 still echoes very powerfully in the work they do today.
Okay, so if the history itself is that complex and devastating, the path to actually bringing this story to the screen, well, it's equally complex and, frankly, absolutely fascinating. We have to start with the most surprising fact about where this film even began. It started with two stand-up comedians.
Right. It sounds unlikely, doesn't it? The originators of this concept were identical twin brothers, Kenny and Keith Lucas. You probably know them from the comedy world as the Lucas brothers.
And what's amazing is they initiated this concept way back in 2014. They saw the cinematic potential in that O'Neill-Hampton dynamic years ago.
And their pitch, it wasn't framed as just, a dry historical document. They pitched it as a high-concept political thriller. The analogy they used, which is so telling, was The Conformist Meets The Departed.
Wow. Okay, that immediately tells you the angle.
Yeah, exactly. It defines that dual focus perfectly. You've got the internal moral decay of the individual O'Neill as the conformist figure set against the backdrop of this high-stakes, violent underworld of loyalty and infiltration, like The Departed.
That's a smart pitch, so they shopped that around.
They did. Took it to major players like A24, Netflix. And before Shaka King got involved, the project nearly took a very different shape. Our sources mentioned an earlier version that had F. Gary Gray potentially directing.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and they were apparently looking at Jaden Smith or Shea Jackson Jr. for the role of Hampton. That version, for whatever reason, stalled, which, maybe thankfully allowed the vision we got to eventually evolve.
So how did Shaka King come into the picture?
That happened around 2016. The Lucas brothers were actually working on a television pilot with Shaka King. They pitched him the Hampton story during that time. King was immediately intrigued, and suddenly the project had its creative anchor. King then brought in screenwriter Will Burson, who, it turns out, had also been developing his own separate Hampton screenplay. So the four of them, King, Burson, and Kenny, and Keith Lucas, they collaborated extensively, merged their visions, hammered out the script together.
A real team effort, then.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And a crucial part of this 6-year development process was getting the authenticity right, ethically and historically. The filmmakers knew, absolutely knew, they could not make this film without the blessing of Fred Hampton's family.
That makes sense.
So director King Daniel Kaluuya and one of the key producers, Charles D. King, they made personal appeals. They reached out directly to Hampton's widow, Akua and Jerry, and his son, Fred Hampton Jr.
And that wasn't just like a courtesy call, right? It was essential.
Non-negotiable. The
Yeah.
family's blessing was absolutely essential. And they weren't just passive approvers. They were actively involved, consulted on the script, on casting decisions, really helped the production maintain fidelity to Hampton's legacy as they saw it.
Now, getting the financing for something like this, that must have been linked to keeping that integrity intact. It wasn't a cheap film.
No, it carried a significant budget, around $26 million. And this is where producer Charles D. King's company, Macro, played a really decisive role. Macro financed fully half of that budget, 50%.
Wow, okay. That's huge for an independent production company, and that gives them leverage, right?
Immense leverage. This financing structure is like a deep dive nugget in itself. Macro putting up half the money meant they were essentially equal partners with the distributor, which was Warner Bros.
Ah, I see.
Producer Charles King specifically emphasized how that arrangement protected the film. It shielded it from the typical demands and compromises you might get from a purely studio-driven project. It meant Shaka King's vision, and those uncompromising, authentic casting choices like getting Kaluuya and Stanfield could be protected.
That kind of financial independence is pretty rare, isn't it? Especially for these kinds of politically sensitive historical dramas.
Extremely rare. So with financing secured and the family on board, production moved forward. They ended up choosing Cleveland, Ohio, to stand in for late 1960s Chicago.
Why Cleveland? Cheaper. For a period look.
Probably a combination of factors, tax incentives, the right kind of period architecture. Filming itself was rapid. Started in October 2019, wrapped after just 42 days in late December. Quick shoot. They used locations like the Ohio State Reformatory, that imposing old prison, to capture the right period feel.
Okay, let's pivot a bit to the soundtrack, because the music for this film became almost a cultural phenomenon in itself, didn't it? And it was definitely instrumental in its eventual award success. There were 2 albums.
That's right, 2 distinct soundtrack albums. The first one contained the film's original score. Really tense, atmospheric backing composed by 2 veterans, Mark Isham and Craig Harris. Effective score.
But the second album was the one that really took off.
Oh yeah, Judas and the Black Messiah. The inspired album. That's the one that captured the cultural moment.
And that was a compilation.
Yeah, 22-track compilation that recruited some of the absolute biggest names in contemporary rap and hip-hop. We're talking Jay-Z, ASAP Rocky, Nas. There's even a posthumous track from Nipsey Hussle.
Wow.
And the idea was for these artists to create music that responded directly to the film's themes, the struggle, the injustice, the revolutionary legacy.
And the impact was big.
Immediate. The inspired album shot straight to the top of the Billboard soundtracks chart, and it reached, I think it was number 12, on the overall weekly Billboard 200 chart. That's impressive for a soundtrack. It really showed that the film's historical message was resonating deeply with contemporary music culture, linking the BPP struggle back then to modern discussions about race and power.
And the ultimate success story from the music side has to be HGR's song, right? Fight for You.
Absolutely. She co-wrote and performed that track,
Yeah.
and it just became this certified awards powerhouse.
Yeah.
Won the Academy Award for Best Original Song.
Oscar winner.
Yep. And later, it also picked up the Grammy for Best Traditional R&B Performance. Huge success.
We also have to talk about the release itself, because the context was unique, to say the least. Challenging.
Totally unique and challenging. It was originally slated for August 2020, but then, COVID-19 hit, and the release was delayed entirely. It eventually got its premiere at the Sundance Film Festival on February 1st, 2021. Generated immediate buzz there.
But the wider release was part of that whole controversial Warner Bros. Strategy for 2021, wasn't it?
Exactly. Warner decided to release its entire 2021 film slate simultaneously in theaters and digitally on HBO Max, but only for a single month. Judas and the Black Messiah fell under that plan. It hit theaters and HBO Max in mid-February 2021.
So the box office figures probably don't tell the whole story.
Not at all. They reflect those constraints. It grossed a modest $7.5 million worldwide against that $26 million budget. Looks like a flop on paper. But the streaming numbers, that's where you see the reach and the importance, especially coming during that period of intense civil rights discourse after 2020.
How many streams?
Over 1.4 million U.S. households streamed the film during that crucial first month on HBO Max. So the demand was massive, even if people couldn't or wouldn't go to physical cinemas yet. The audience found it.
Yeah.
#SAGIV, reception, and the curious case of the supporting actors.
Okay, so when we looked at the critical reception, it seems pretty clear the film just transcended those difficult release circumstances. It basically achieved instant classic status, didn't it?
Oh, absolutely. The consensus was overwhelming. It achieved universal acclaim. Got a 96% positive rating on Rotten Tomatoes, which is huge, an 84 on Metacritic. And maybe just as importantly, the audience is polled by CinemaScore, which measures, actual audience enthusiasm. They gave the film a rare A grade.
An A. Wow. That's hard to get.
Very hard. It indicates not just that critics thought it was high quality, but that it had a really strong emotional resonance with the people who watched it.
And the praise was pretty holistic, right? Across the board.
Yeah, critics lauded pretty much everything. Shaka King's focused, intense direction, the taut cinematography, capturing that 60s feel, but also the tension, the depth of the screenplay. And of course, the powerhouse performances, Kaluuya, Stanfield, Dominique Fishback as Deborah Johnson, all singled out.
And the timing definitely played a role in how it was received, coming out shortly after the massive racial justice uprisings of 2020.
Yeah, critics frequently noted that. They praised the film for doing more than just retelling history. It put the current moment into fresh historical context, as one review put it. It was hailed widely as a forceful condemnation of racial injustice, connecting past and present.
And it immediately got compared to other big historical dramas of the time.
Oh, yeah. It entered that conversation straight away. For instance, the Chicago Tribune review called it brash, narratively risky, full of life. And then they went on to explicitly state that it was, quote, a leap and a bound ahead of the recent Netflix production, The Trial of the Chicago 7.
Ooh, direct comparison.
Yeah. That kind of comment really placed Judas firmly in the top tier of contemporary American historical cinema. It wasn't just another biopic. It was seen as something more vital.
Okay, but a film dealing with figures as revered as Hampton and systems as, well, destructive as COINTELPRO and the actions of the FBI and police, it must have faced some internal critique too, especially from those aligned with Hampton's politics.
Absolutely. And our sources highlight some really fascinating conflicting viewpoints here. This is a key area to explore because it shows just how difficult it is to adapt history, especially a revolutionary history, in a way that satisfies everyone. There was definitely ideological critique.
Like what?
Well, for example, former Black Panther Party member Eddie Conway, who spent decades in prison himself, he publicly stated that he felt the film's portrayal of Hampton was factually inaccurate in its temperament.
Temperament. How so?
Conway argued the film depicted Hampton as maybe too cold, too hardened, almost this kind of granite-like political figure. Whereas the historical Hampton, according to those who knew him well, was known for being outwardly warm-hearted, incredibly charismatic, even humorous in his day-to-day interactions.
So a potential tension between capturing the revolutionary seriousness and the personal warmth.
Exactly. That critique highlights the bind filmmakers can be in needing cinematic drama, which sometimes demands a certain severity, versus capturing the nuanced, full reality of a complex leader.
And then there was the structural critique about focusing on O'Neill.
Right. This goes to the core decision the title announces.
Yeah.
Centering the story on Judas, the betrayer. Other leftist critics argue that this choice was a bit of a worn-out trope. Something often deployed in films about martyred figures who challenged the capitalist system.
What's the argument against that focus?
The argument is basically by making the informant's anxiety, his internal moral struggle, the central dramatic hook of the film, you inevitably neglect to spend sufficient time really elucidating the actual complexity, the intellectual rigor, the revolutionary political platform that Fred Hampton himself was advocating for.
So the film becomes more of a thriller about a mole, potentially overshadowing the political message.
That's the critique. That it risks becoming more about the betrayal mechanism than a deep dive into the political system Hampton was fighting against. It's a valid debate about narrative choices and their consequences.
Okay, this inherent tension between, narrative structure and historical mandate, it leads us perfectly to probably the most talked about awards moment of that season, the Oscar nomination anomaly.
Yes, the supporting actor situation.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, the film clearly has two leads, right? You've got Kaluuya as the Black Messiah, Fred Hampton, and you've got Lakeith Stanfield as Judas, William O'Neill. The entire plot hinges on O'Neill's perspective.
Seems pretty clear-cut, doesn't it?
Yet, when the Oscar nominations were announced, Daniel Kaluuya and Lakeith Stanfield were both nominated for the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor.
Both of them, which immediately made everyone go, huh.
It raised eyebrows everywhere, not just because, the line between lead and supporting can be blurry sometimes, but because it created this highly unusual situation. How can the two main characters both be supporting?
It was unconventional enough that it sparked serious analysis from awards pundits and journalists. Often, when studios have two strong actors in potentially lead roles in the same film, they'll strategically campaign one as lead and the other as supporting.
Right, to avoid splitting the vote in one category, maximize the chances of a win somewhere.
Exactly. But here, the confusion felt more genuine because the film really does feel like a two-hander. It forced people to genuinely question, well, what is the fundamental focus of this story? Who is it truly about?
And the New York Times journalist Kyle Buchanan had that perfect distillation of the absurdity, didn't he?
Yeah, he jokingly asked on Twitter, I think it was, if Stanfield and Kaluuya are both supporting actors, then who exactly is this movie supposed to be about? Which summed up the confusion perfectly.
So what was the final outcome?
Ultimately, it was an undeniable, massive triumph for Kaluuya. His portrayal of Hampton was just so powerful, so commanding, that he swept the major awards. He won the Academy Award, the Golden Globe, the BAFTA, the Screen Actors Guild Award, all for Best Supporting Actor.
Total sweep.
Total sweep. Stanfield, though nominated right alongside him in that category, didn't win. But the fact that they were both nominated, both recognized at that level, really underlined the undeniable power of their collaborative dual performances at the heart of the film, even if the category felt weird. Hashtag tag Jizzy app. The unconventional background of the storytellers. Okay, so now let's circle all the way back to the guys who first conceived this whole high-stakes narrative. The screenwriters, Kenny and Keith Lucas. Because their personal journey, it provides maybe the most compelling insight into why this film, despite being this heavy political tragedy, felt so structurally precise, maybe even had that analytical edge.
The Lucas brothers.
Yeah.
Known for their comedy.
Exactly. Identical twin brothers, known primarily for their unique brand of observational, sometimes surreal, satirical comedy. That alone is a pretty startling pivot point for writing a searing political assassination thriller.
Definitely unexpected. But their intellectual foundation, that's the really key part, isn't it?
It's absolutely key. They weren't just, comedy guys who stumbled into this. Before stand-up, they were philosophers. Both brothers graduated with honors from the College of New Jersey back in 2007. Their degrees, philosophy.
Philosophy. Okay, that changes the picture a bit.
Completely. Think about the disciplines inherent in studying philosophy. Ethics, political theory, logic, existentialism. These are all perfect lenses through which to view the moral complexities, the decay of an informant figure like William O'Neill.
That makes a lot of sense, actually. But their academic ambition didn't even stop there, did it?
Not even close.
Yeah.
They made an even more significant commitment to academia before that final pivot into comedy. They both enrolled in top-tier law schools. Kenny went to NYU School of Law. Keith went to Duke University School of Law.
Wow. NYU and Duke Law, that's serious academic firepower.
Absolutely. And here is the truly incredible part, the testament to their commitment to their creative calling. They attended law school all the way through until the literal final week of their third year.
No way. The final week.
The final week. They were basically standing on the threshold of graduation. Probably should have been prepping for the bar exam. And then together they decided, nope, we're dropping out to pursue stand-up comedy full-time.
That takes, I don't even know what that takes. Guts, insanity, conviction.
An incredible amount of conviction, I think.
Yeah.
To walk away from that level of investment, that kind of guaranteed status and likely income. But they did it. They committed fully to comedy, made their late-night debut on Late Night with Jimmy Fallon in 2012.
Right.
Then they developed their own animated series, Lucas Bros. Moving Co. Appeared in movies like 22 Jump Street in 2014. They really built a comedy career.
And their comedy style, it reflects that background, doesn't it? It's not just jokes.
Not at all. It's highly specific.
Oh.
It's categorized as observational, sure, but it leans heavily into political comedy, black comedy, satire, sometimes surreal humor. Their subjects frequently dissect African-American culture, American politics, race relations, but through this deliberately critical, often kind of detached analytical lens.
So the philosophical training, the legal analysis training, it clearly informed that satirical viewpoint. Their comedy wasn't just, slapstick. It was critical analysis disguised as humor.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And that blend of analytical rigor and that sort of detached black comedic observation, it gave them the perfect, albeit totally unusual toolkit to approach the deep tragedy of Fred Hampton's life without just succumbing to simple melodrama or sentimentality.
And they got recognition for their comedy, too, right? Before the movie.
Oh, yeah, significant recognition. Their 2017 Netflix special, Lucas Brothers, on drugs, was highly acclaimed. It applied their signature, surreal, critical style to topics like addiction and identity. Pace magazine ranked it the 9th best comedy special of that year. So there were deeply embedded successful figures in the comedy world when this political thriller project finally gained traction.
And then the success of Judas and the Black Messiah just cemented this incredible multi-genre pivot. Their debut film is Screenwriters,
Yeah.
and they get nominated for an Oscar.
Nominated for the Academy Award and the Writers Guild of America Award for Best Original Screenplay. Just phenomenal for debut feature script.
And they won some major awards, too.
They did. Along with Shaka King and Will Burson, they won the NAACP Image Award for Outstanding Writing in a Motion Picture. And they also won the prestigious Paul Selvin Award from the WGA, which specifically honors the film that best embodies the spirit of constitutional rights and civil liberties. A very fitting award for this film.
So what are they doing now? Still writing drama?
Yeah.
Or back to comedy?
Their trajectory is fascinating. They're now taking that writing acumen and applying it across genres. They are developing a new comedy project with Phil Lord and Christopher Miller, the guys behind Spider-Verse, the Lego Movie, 21 Jump Street.
Okay, that sounds promising.
Yeah, known for really sharp, witty stuff. And they're also working on a semi-autobiographical film based on their own lives, which is going to be produced by Judd Apatow.
The king of modern comedy, so they're really straddling both worlds now.
Exactly. But so fascinating is that synthesis. They went from philosophy to law to satire, and then applied all that training to write this searing political tragedy that earned them Hollywood's highest honors. It just shows the power, maybe, of bringing a really analytical, even detached mind to even the most emotional, gut-wrenching material. #tags the outro and final thought.
So, okay, after this deep dive into the history, the production complexities, the unconventional creative team behind it all, what's the key takeaway here? I mean, Judas and the Black Messiah clearly stands not just as a necessary historical record, but as a major artistic and cultural achievement, right?
I think that's undeniable. Despite those constraints of the pandemic release that really dampened the box office numbers, the film absolutely secured its legacy. Universal critical acclaim, multiple Oscar wins, including for Kaluuya and the song.
Yeah.
It made its mark.
And the story of how it got made, it feels like a powerful lesson in cross-genre application or something. You have this tragic historical account, FBI manipulation, betrayal, assassination. Yet it was meticulously shaped by screenwriters who came from philosophy, law, and satirical black comedy.
Yeah, and that background, that specific combination, allowed them to construct this high-stakes thriller that looks at the systematic destruction of a revolutionary leader through a lens that feels both critical and coolly intellectual, maybe, not just purely emotional.
Right. And that blend maybe ensured the film was seen not just as history, but as this unsettling, deeply relevant mirror, reflecting the continued issues of systemic injustice we're still grappling with today. The Lucas brothers' journey, it kind of reminds us that sometimes the most insightful, the most enduring works of art, they come from people who approach these really serious subjects with an unexpected, maybe even rigorous analytical background.
Well said. So maybe we leave you, the listener, with this final provocative thought. Armed now with all this knowledge about Fred Hampton's short but incredibly powerful life, about the decades-long FBI lawsuit, the COINTELPRO context, and the continued involvement of his son in preserving that legacy. The film's structural choice, the one we discussed, to center O'Neill, the betrayer. It really highlights the cost of complicity, the cost of ambivalence. So if, as some of those critics claimed, ambivalence can be its own form of betrayal, what does that imply about your own engagement, your own attention to uncomfortable historical truths and systemic issues today? Now that you're armed with this detailed knowledge from the film and its history.
That's definitely something to mull over. How do we engage with these histories once we know them? What responsibility comes with that knowledge? Food for thought as you reflect on the complexities of the past and the choices we all make in the present. That's it for this deep dive. We'll see you next time.